Welcome, everybody. I'm so excited that you're here. It's 11:11, and we're going to get started. I know many of you are going to be joining on chat, and I'm excited to hear all of your questions. And there's many questions that came in prior to the show, so we will take a look here at some of the questions. Please jump in at any time. I'll do my best to keep trying to check the chat, but yeah. So let's hear what you have to talk about today on this Sunday morning. I hope everyone is super well. It's actually quite cloudy and a little overcast and misty here in Southern California. So it's a good day to be in talking about all things on a soul level. So yeah, let's jump right in, and I'll pull up the first question that I have, and I'm happy to hear whatever questions you may have from your side. Okay. Let's see. The first one here, I think might be a little bit of a interesting one. How do you know if you're with a narcissist? Can we identify on the first date, or does it take longer? I believe we can identify on the first date. I'll use a little bit of an example from Angels, Herpes, and Psychedelics. So if you've read the book, you know all about sleeping with the devil and what happened in that chapter. And, while I would never want to have to repeat a situation or a relationship like that again in my life, I do feel that I survived it and wrote about it so that I could help other people understand how not to get entangled with a narcissist, but also recognizing that sometimes that's just on our soul's plan. I mean, I do think that that it was divinely guided that whole situation happened. But going back to that particular situation, I had like this feeling in my gut. If you recall from the book, when I met that gentleman, Klaus, on the yacht that we had rented that day, I had a knowingness right away that he was just full of crap. And yeah, my body had said something to me, but I was really tired that day, and a lot was happening. And so he suggested that we go to dinner on our own and not be with the group, which, could be flag number one. Oftentimes it's better to stay in the group and see how people interact with others. But we know sometimes if there's a little bit of romance or potential for romance, it's nice to just branch off and then have your opportunity to speak to each other alone. So not necessarily, something that I would say don't branch off, but see how they're interacting with others and see how other people receive their energy. But most importantly, really feel into how you are feeling about this person. So then I'll take it to the next step. So the next step was, and I didn't realize this, of course, until long after this whole episode with the narcissist happened, narcissistic sociopath. Then it was a situation where we were alone, and he was as a sociopath. And again, I didn't even know what these terms meant back then. So that's the crazy part of it all. And he was just reading my energy. And as an empath and someone who's very spiritual, I'm very, very open. In my corporate life, I would say I'm not. I was much more closed and probably harder to read. And just a little bit more protective of my energy and maybe a little bit more calculated because I was thinking a lot more. But when it came to personal relationships, if you got me out and about, I'm an open heart, and I love to talk about all matters of the heart, my life, details. So I'm a private person, and yet in the right situation, I'm a very open-hearted person, and I want to get to the heart of the matter. So I opened my heart that night and discussing my life and what I saw for my life and what I was here to do, and even talked about pollinating the planet with love. And so as a sociopath, he was able to just, read me as an open book, and he saw my bright white light, and he saw that I was here to help heal humanity in some way, shape, or form. And he wanted to take advantage of that. So he knew all the things to say. So he said all the perfect things, which I just wasn't realizing that he was just reflecting back to me, a lot of things that I was saying. And then if you've read the book, you'll know the one hook line that got me, and I'll leave that to be read about. But there was one hook that really sucked me in, and then I was like hook, line, and sinker, and had no idea that he was just sucking my light and entangling on my life cord. So looking back, what did I learn from that? Well, I learned that one of the traits about narcissists is that they really love to love bomb you. So they love to tell you everything that a woman, I'll say a woman, but it could be the reverse. It could be that you're a man listening to this and you've had a woman who's a narcissist. And there's a lot of love bombing that goes on, a lot of fast moving, let's make our lives together. So there's a lot of this going on, a lot of affection, a lot of things are said that you're just like, wow, that seems like kind of a lot. I just met you, right? But then it's those words about, oh, well, we probably lived a previous life, or I just feel like I know you. I feel like I trust you more than I can trust anyone else. So all of these kinds of things it's language that usually comes much later in a relationship when we actually know someone a little bit more. So they're oftentimes just picking up on your open heart and your ability to really be present with them. So I do believe that you can pick up on a narcissist right away. Now, a couple other things that come to mind to share. I recently had a conversation with a dear friend who called me and just said to me, I just feel like, my boyfriend that I'm with, he's like, there's just something about him. I just can't quite figure it out, but I just feel like, like maybe he's not telling me the truth. And I said, oh, stop right there. Why are you even questioning yourself? I said, if you felt that with me, you would instantly say something to me as a friend. You would instantly say, hey, Beth, that makes me feel odd, or that makes me, or you just wouldn't be my friend if you really thought that there was something there. So it's like this interesting undertow that people with a love interest can bring, where we don't want to maybe question them. And so if you find yourself feeling like, should I trust this person? That's a big hit. If you're asking yourself the question, I said, hey, to my friend, I said, have you ever once in any conversation we've had, have you ever said, do I trust her? Have you ever said, do I trust that she's telling me the truth? And she said, yeah, no, you're right. And I was like, that's the hint. That's the cue. That's the clue, right? Is when we get that feeling of, is someone telling me the truth? It's your instinct. It's your intuition. It's your, if you're a mother, it's your mother's intuition. It's your connection to your body and yourself that's saying, hey, there's a red light here. But oftentimes we want to ignore that, because what do? We follow the fantasy of the mind and the fantasy of what we want this person to be. And then they're sitting there going, I'm your fantasy. I'll be your fantasy, because they know how to do it and they know how to play it. And so narcissists can be really, really interesting. And I think if you find yourself encountering one, it's a really good thing, because then you know that you are being, you're up for a real lesson. You're up for a real lesson and discernment of whether or not you bite and you jump in like I did, or if you go, I trust my higher self. I trust my discernment. I'm going to go inward and I'm going to just feel like, how does this person make me feel? So absolutely, I think you can identify on the first date if you're with a narcissist or not. And I think that it's, again, going, to that place of discernment within yourself and not questioning yourself, because that is the other thing that narcissists are so good at is getting us to question our own thoughts, question our own intuition, our own. So anyway, I think I've belabored that point. So yes, absolutely. We can do this. Let me see here. I'm going to look and see if I've got some other things in the chat. Okay. I think I answered that one. How did you get to this place where you can share with the world about having herpes? Wow, that's a good one. If you've listened to some of my other interviews and episodes, I talk about this a lot, that I actually have COVID to thank for this, in many ways, because the first draft of my book, I actually had written that I was exposed to herpes, and I had the scene in there with Klaus, but I didn't say that I had actually had a positive test for herpes. And I just felt like that was a more protected way to talk about a difficult topic, and that maybe I didn't have to talk about me being positive, and I didn't have to disclose that. Because, when it happened to me, it was incredibly traumatic on so many fronts. And again, if you've read the book, you know what happened, and just the everything around that was so painful. But when COVID happened, what I started to realize was that everyone understood what virus shame was. And so I was like, wow, like people get this, because people were shaming people left and right. Not so much now, but like, in the heat of it, it was like, oh, did you wear your face mask? Or, oh, you shouldn't have gone out in public. Or, oh, did you fly on a plane? And, there was like all these questions around like, why did you get COVID? And a lot of people didn't want to say, like, I was so surprised. I have COVID. Don't tell anybody. It's like, what do you mean don't tell anybody? Like, why aren't we telling people? Like, so we can send you love and light, and we can all be in support of you. That's what you would do if you had, another flu. You'd say, hey, I'm not feeling well. I got the flu. I'm down. And we'd say, oh, okay, let's send you some love and light, and, let's support you. But when it came to COVID, that virus shame, man, that just came out. And so I wanted to just address that, because that brought to light for me how much we needed to get beyond the whole idea of viruses and the whole idea of this leopardization. I made up that word, but feeling like we're a leper, feeling like we're an outcast of society, feeling like we're damaged goods. When the reality is that the data shows that 450 million people have herpes. And I'm sure that has nothing to do with all the number of people who haven't tested positive, but actually carry the virus. So it's very, very prevalent in our society today. And yet nobody wants to talk about it. And everybody wants to say that, oh, that's not me, or that won't be me. And until it is you, then you start to realize, wow, there's something really here. And it creates trauma, it creates wounds, it creates energy stuck at a cellular level within your body. And so we need to release this stuff. We need to release these ideas, this energy, anything, that there's anything but a wholeness and perfection in who you are. That is where we're really headed to, is to know that I am perfect and whole. And that's something that A Course in Miracles is so great at teaching us, is that we are perfect and whole, and it's just the correction of the mind, right? It's such an easy concept, and yet an incredibly difficult concept. If you're on the journey and you've been unraveling your mind, which is the name of the show, you understand just how difficult it can be. I mean, a lot of people talk about this in more traditional senses of, oh, I'm peeling back the layers of the onion. That's fine too. I like to think about unraveling the mind, because I just feel that it is this beautiful experience of really unraveling ourselves and getting back to that perfection of wholeness and knowing who we really are, which is something I love to talk about. But before I do, let's see if there's some other questions, and let me just double check that I actually answered that one. So how did you get to this place where you can share the world about having herpes? So in the next iterations of the book, as you know, I decided that no, I'm telling people that I was positive because I want to talk about what happened after that. I wanted to talk about how difficult the conversations were with partners. I wanted to talk about how difficult it was for me to keep walking through life, not feeling like damaged goods, and how difficult that was to actually shift the narrative in my own head about the damage that I felt to myself physically in my body, but also to myself mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And that we can all get beyond this. And if you haven't seen some of my other videos, I've had a great discussion with a sexologist, Nick, who he and I just had an amazing discussion. Please, I'll put the links in this video below, but great discussion about herpes and diffusing all of this judgment and stigma around it. I also had another discussion with an alchemist, I think a homeopathic doctor who has incredible tinctures and things for herpes and all viruses. So I think that, the takeaway from both of those conversations, well, not the takeaway, but one of the things that we talked a lot about in both of those videos was how the virus can be such an incredible check engine light, because we carry so many viruses in our body, but the herpes virus actually gives us clues that our immune system is down, that perhaps we're more acidic and not alkaline enough. Maybe we have too much stress in our life. Maybe we need to get a little more sleep. So the check engine light that herpes provides is amazing. Whereas the other viruses, they don't give us that. They just like, boom, show up one day and you are flat out. And and then you have to really do the inner reflection. So it's all about your relationship to everything, to your whole external environment. Look, it's everything. But right now we're talking about herpes, we're talking about viruses. We saw that also with COVID. We saw how, our whole relationship with COVID, which I don't know, I'm digressing now, but another thought came to mind. Sylvia Browne, famous psychic medium, lots of interesting, stuff around her, but I had a chance to meet her on a Hay House cruise, which I also talk about in the book. And she was just amazing what she downloaded for people. Once she got the question from people, she just was like, okay, let me give you the answer. And you could tell she was just getting the answers right from that person's spiritual guides or her guides. And she wrote in a book, and I don't have the quote in front of me because I wasn't prepared to speak about this, but she actually had written in a book that there would be a virus. Like, she was predicting a virus from Wuhan that would come in and take over, and it would leave as fast as it came. Now, I don't think it left as fast as it came, but it has the potential to leave as fast as it came, because it was all about the fear of the mind. The mind was creating fear around this concept, this idea that was called, COVID. And so, she was suggesting that we could eliminate it as quickly as the fear spread. And so I like to talk a lot about viruses of the mind in general, right? Not viruses as we know it, but viruses of the mind, ideas, concepts that come into our mind, infiltrate us and fill us with fear. Because we also know from A Course in Miracles that it's always about fear or love. What am I acting out of, fear or love? And so, we can get deep into the mind viruses, and maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But I just want to make sure I answer all the questions that are coming forward here. And let's see. So, and if I haven't answered these questions to your liking, please put in the comments below, and I will be sure to add them to next week's call or to answer them in the chat if it's something that's easy to just write about. So please let me know if it's resonating for you, or if you need more, or even if you disagree with me. I'm happy to hear about it. All right. So you're referring to your soul's plan. What do you mean by that? So that's a great question too. And I do often refer to a soul's plan. And I think, I've done that today. So thank you for asking for that clarification. When I talk about our soul's plan, I talk about the plan that we came into this lifetime with. They're the key points that we know are going to happen. They're going to happen pretty much no matter what. But we have free will along the journey. And that's where the ego mind comes in. And the ego mind tries to divert us and spin us and take us down this road, or let's take the long road home. Whereas the soul's plan is like, okay, these are the big points that we're going to experience in this lifetime, so that we can go back to remembering to source who we really are. Now, everybody's on a different trajectory in their soul's plan, meaning that some of us have been back on this earth plane many, many times. Some of us are newer souls. We don't need to compare how many lifetimes we've had with others necessarily. I think it's all about bringing forward what we learned from some of these other lifetimes. And in some cases, some of the things that might be holding us back from other lifetimes, subconscious memories that we may be holding. It could be ancestral programming that we're holding. So our soul's plan is really that template that before we came into this physical body, this meat suit, we decided that we're going to have X, Y, and Z experiences. And that's also why a lot of astrologers can read our astrology. I remember the first time I had my chart read, and I was like, oh wow, how did they know that I did that at that date? I mean, pegged my marriage almost to the date, and I had never met this person. There was no way they could have done research on me. They knew exactly some really important dates. And so I found that fascinating. And that's why, because we've already put this out there. We already know what our big points are to hit. How we get there is still our free will. So that's the beauty of being here, is that we have free will. And sometimes it's the pain of being here on this earth plane, because it can get challenging. When we're following the ego mind, it's like putting a 2-year-old child in the driver's seat. I also refer to that. My dear friend Angelique talked a lot about that to me, and I talked about it in the book, about putting that 2-year-old in the driver's seat is like having your ego mind drive, because it's schizophrenic. It works on fear. It works on the external environment. It works on what now, what next. Whereas the soul, letting the soul drive, helps us come from the heart space, come from our higher self, come from guidance, come from, a whole different place where peace and love exist, and not fear and intrepidation about moving through all of life's happenings. So the soul's plan, I'll probably talk about that on every one of these calls, because I love the soul's plan, and I too struggle. At times I'm following the ego mind. My mind is strong. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, let me follow that, because I know. No, in fact, another thing that comes to mind to share is I've been on this beautiful group of meditators in the morning. We meditate for 30 minutes, and then we have a discussion. And one of the exercises recently was the difference between saying, I don't know, and not knowing. And the difference is incredibly profound, because not knowing brings in that childlike curiosity, brings in that place, that space of excitement about seeing what's unfolding, as opposed to what you think or your ego thinks that it needs to do about it, right? As I said, I'm always still working on this too, because my programs are, do it, get it done, right? But we all know that life isn't about doing, it's about being. That's why we're human beings. We're not human doers. And that's the journey that we're all on. And we have so many incredible enlightened masters who have come before us and are still here with us on this planet, saying the same thing about being and not doing. And of course, we have to take inspired action, right? So there is inspired action to take. It doesn't mean we do nothing, but it means that we don't follow the mind. We don't follow the mind's idea of what we need to do. We really use the inspired action to take action and move the needle forward in the direction of the soul's plan. So big difference. Just practice saying not knowing, instead of I don't know. I don't know is like, for me, it's petrifying. I don't like to not know. My mind doesn't like to not know, because I like to have the answers. I like to find the solutions. I like to be accountable and responsible. And I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't be. Of course, we should be. We should be accountable and responsible. But there's a different space and place where we can come from, that's a place of centered peace that passes all understanding, that keeps our hearts and minds open, right? And so that's where we want to be. And that's the soul's plan. So if your heart and mind is open, you're already letting your soul drive. If you're in fear-based thinking and doing, then good chance that you've got a 2-year-old ego mind in the driver's seat. So just beware. Okay, let's see. The next question. Let's see, do I have any other questions also here on the chat? I think, yes. Okay, let me get to this. So the next one is, how do you define love? Well, that's a great question, because I think love can sound really ominous. And I define love as a feeling of expanded states of consciousness. What do I mean by that? I know it sounds a little bit big, big words. What I mean by that is it's that space in between the words. It's that feeling that is unexplainable. It's that that knowingness, that connection, that feeling that we're not alone. That's love. That's love at its finest. That's our connection to source at the highest level. That's just being in 100% awareness and expanded states of consciousness where we're really present and here and with spirit. And then we get these beautiful opportunities where people come and reflect love to us. Oftentimes it's illusionary love, romantic illusionary love. The romantic love illusion is also the next book that I'm writing right now. So it's a topic very near and dear to my heart. Yeah, love. It's such an interesting thing. I think one of the things about children, and keep in mind, I have not had my own children in this lifetime, but I feel like I've had so many children in so many lifetimes. It's that unconditional feeling of connection and wholeness that we experience with newborn babies, because they don't have the programs indoctrinated within them. Yes, they're bringing their karma in. Yes, they can come in with some really interesting, aspects about themselves and characteristics and whatnot, but they have this pureness about them. This pureness where they're living in love and they're vulnerable and they're receiving from you, right? They're receiving love. So they just teach us so much about how to receive love in our life. And that feeling is what I think, children are really here to teach us. And at one point in my life, early on in my life, I just absolutely thought without a doubt I would have children. There was just no question about that. So when I left Stewart, which I'm sure you read about in the book, if you've read it, it was a tough thing. I was like, oh gosh, am I going to meet someone in time to have children? But my conviction was so strong about following my soul's path and journey that I knew that if children were right for me, they would come in. And if they weren't, they wouldn't. And so it didn't take too long. I don't know. I'm going to guess. Honestly don't remember, but I would say like 5, 6, 8 years maybe. And I realized, children are not in my life plan this lifetime. And I felt that they weren't, because I feel children come to teach us 2 main lessons. Everyone, there's like 2 main lessons that all children come here to teach us. Anyone want to guess what they are? Put it in the chat. Pure love and forgiveness. And the only way to pure love is through forgiveness. And oftentimes that's forgiveness of ourselves. Right? So of course, it's forgiveness of others, but sometimes the hardest is forgiveness of ourselves. And then of course for children, then they come in with these soul contracts with us. And then there's all these other things that they're here to teach us. But at the core of it, those are the 2 biggies. Those are the 2 that they're really here to jolt us with. And it's easier to understand forgiveness when it comes to a tiny little baby, and as they grow up and things happen, then all the other lessons come in, and then forgiveness can be a little bit more challenging for us. But they're here to teach us that. And they're here to teach us to extend that beyond that little baby, beyond that little person, to all of our relationships with our own parents, our relationships with our lovers and our friends and our brothers and sisters walking on planet Earth. So children are amazing little beings that are here to teach us pure love and forgiveness. All right. So I digressed a little bit off the question. How do I define love? So it is that feeling, and it's a beautiful thing when we can experience it with someone else, and when someone else is reflecting it to us, but it's that space of nothingness. It's that space of non-attachment. And that's where, and I'll talk about this, I'm sure, on many shows, but because I'm deep in the writing of the next book, but it's the romantic love illusion that gets us all messed up about what love is. It looks like it's outside of ourselves. It looks like it's coming from someone else. It looks like it's coming from the baby. It looks like it's coming from our parents. It looks like it's coming from our lovers, our partners, our spouses. And while they are helping us feel love and know love within ourselves, they are not the source of that love. And there's so many examples of it that make it really easy to see this. Especially when we start the romantic love illusion, we get into a new relationship and the sparks fly, and we build all these fantasies, and we build all these ideations. And when they're not with us, we feel this love, and so great. And I love that. I love that stage of relationships. But it's always just a reminder that that love is within ourselves, and that we are attracting someone else in our life to help us awaken to new levels. And so then we do start to understand love in different ways within ourselves through our relationships. So if we're lucky to have a long-term partnership and we're, with someone for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and it's a relationship where we're learning the lessons, that's deep unconditional love in many cases. And in other cases, it's not. People stay for the wrong reasons. But so love is something always within us, something that we can share with someone else. And the best place, I don't like to say best, but the most amazing place to be is when you're in that unconditional love, which is when giving and receiving are the same. That we're not giving love to get something in return. And love is a powerful thing. And unfortunately, a lot of times that power gets misused and abused, and without people even knowing. So that goes all the way back to the core wounds that people are experiencing, and how relationships can help us move through those, whether we stay in them, whether we get the lessons and we go. We all have different and varying ways that we are going to learn the message of love, and that everything is love. So, all right. So let's see here. There's another question coming up. Okay. This is a good one too. How do you think psychedelics will change humanity, and why didn't it already happen? The 60s and 70s were a big push. Okay, so if I understand this person's question, I do think psychedelics psychedelics can absolutely help us change humanity. But it's also about how the humans interact with psychedelics, and how we allow the soul to drive and not the ego mind. There are a lot of forces at play, which I guess I'll wait to get into that topic a little bit here. But psychedelics have the ability to get us beyond the ego mind. And how do they do that? Well, in most cases, it's helping to quiet or shut down the default mode network, which is all the programs that the mind runs. A lot of those programs are good. They're necessary, because we've learned that if the stove is hot, we don't want to touch it. So we don't need to relearn that every time. So some of those programs, we don't want to eliminate those programs. Those programs help us function on autopilot. But it's the programs that are functioning on autopilot that are not serving our higher good, which are the ones that we need to get rid of. Now, the 60s and 70s, I wasn't around in the 60s, but I was in the 70s, but I was pretty tiny. And, we know all about the war on drugs. And growing up, I learned that you do not want to be that egg in the frying pan. That was your brain on drugs. And there was a huge, huge narrative and scare tactics everywhere about this. Well, there was a real good reason why. And that reason was that with psychedelics and everything that was happening with LSD and psilocybin, MDMA, all of these drugs that were out there were being used in more party situations, more Woodstock situations. And I'm not trying to place a judgment on that. But what those drugs were doing was giving people the freedom from their mind and the social constructs and ideations that had been built over time. And they were starting to get people back to the idea of oneness and helping our brothers and sisters out and not being separate and understanding that we're all connected. And so there was incredible things happening with the movement in the 60s and 70s. But then there's social constructs like the government that came in and said, well, wait a second, we can't have people not wanting to go to war. Look, I'm sure everyone listening here has a lot of familiarity with some of this, but I don't want to skip over some really juicy tidbits about our history, because that's what started this whole war on drugs. And there is a good reason for some drugs to not be available, because they're working on different receptors, and they're dopamine, and they're very much addictive, and they take you, they take you into a place that's not your soul's plan or your soul's journey. So I'm not saying this as a whole blanket around drugs, because there is a reason that we need to have some control over this. But when it came to psychedelics, when it came to plant-based medicines, we've been given by Mother Nature some really incredible things. Or if you want to say in the laboratories, because LSD was created in a laboratory, so was MDMA. They were created by scientists that were most likely downloading this information from their starseed families to help humanity. It's like, I don't know, this is an interesting example that comes to mind, but it's sort of like the atomic bomb. Like people got downloaded with how to put this together. And then it was used for the wrong reasons. So if we're given some of these tools like psychedelics, and then it's used for the wrong reasons, then it's not as helpful for humanity. And so I think our second time around now, we have this huge opportunity to shift the narrative. It's one of the reasons why on the book I actually have psychedelics on here, is because I feel very driven to help shift the narrative around psychedelics as awakening agents, not as the war on drugs, and for people to know who they really are, and to get beyond the programs of the mind, to get beyond the suffering, to get beyond the storylines that were created in most cases at a very, very young age. So for many people, for trauma that they've experienced in this lifetime, there's so many things that psychedelics can help us do. With that said, there's a lot of funny business that can go on with psychedelics as well, because it opens us up. It opens our aura. It opens our soul. It opens us up to a lot of different things. So I will always say, setting, and server, so important. So important that we really understand who we're sitting with, what mindset we come into, our intention setting, right? What is our intention? Where I would say this might be a little bit where I come in and say, well, maybe the 60s and 70s, it got a little bit out of hand. Because one of the things I can say from personal experience is that how long you've been doing psychedelics doesn't matter. How often you do psychedelics doesn't matter. What matters is the integration process of what you learned while you were on a psychedelic trip. What did you bring back to this dimension, to this here and now? Did you protect yourself while you were out there in the cosmos? Are you bringing back entities when you come back here? So there's lots of things to consider. And I don't say that to scare you. I say that to really empower you to use your discernment if you're thinking about, or you're feeling called to sit with psychedelics. Just like a narcissist can come in and hoodwink us and suck on our life cord and do psychic attacks. We've got the same thing going on in other dimensions. So don't go in naive. Find people who you trust, who innately inside you go, oh, I know that I will feel safe in this environment. I understand the server's intention. I understand the types of people the server attracts. All of those things. So again, a whole nother episode can be done on this, and it probably will be in future around psychedelics. But I think we just went a little bit off the rails in the 60s and 70s. Things got a little bit out of hand. The integration work, which is the most important part, wasn't being done. So a lot of the information wasn't being embodied on a sustainable level. People were coming back with all these ideas and sounding crazy, and they are kind of crazy ideas, but they're not. I mean, I'm saying that as a blanket statement, right? But when we really understand the bliss of divine oneness, then we get it. but it's conceptually something the mind doesn't really want you to get, because then the ego is out of a job. And so there's a really nice balance of where psychedelics can help us be in this world, but not of it. We can start to understand things from a whole different perspective. It's like when we had physics and then we had quantum physics. It took our understanding to a completely different level, right? The holographic universe, everything is a projection of our minds. So everything that I think, maybe not everything, but a lot of what psychedelics teaches us is also shown in quantum physics. So it's not that far, well, it is far out there, but it's still grounded in many ways in science. So yes, so you can all challenge me on that if you want, but there's lots of scientists that are really well equipped to address that and to talk about that, and how quantum physics really does uncover all the mysteries, and I think gives us the best definition of what God is, and helping us to remember to know who we really are. So, all right, let me see if there's any other questions in the live chat here. I'm just going to go over and take a quick look, make sure I've got everything from YouTube, and I've got everything from Zoom room here. All right, so let's see. Is there any last questions anyone want to bring up? I'm just waiting just another moment to see. Sometimes everyone's just kind of stunned or waiting to see who else is going to ask. Let's see if something else comes up here. Okay. What inspired you to do this show? Well, okay. What inspired me to do this show is I, for some reason, somehow always felt that I was going to do what I was calling a talk show. And so I felt like I was here to help difficult discussions, awakening discussions, spiritual expansion in consciousness discussions. And I felt that it was to do this through our own personal stories, and to, I don't know, this is an interesting analogy that comes to mind, but I always like to just take what's coming in. You know, the show Seinfeld, he just took like things that happen in everyday life and helped us laugh at it. Well, I like to take things that happen to us in everyday life that are like really hard to deal with and unravel the core of why we called that in, why we are the creator of our lives. Why am I creating that? I mean, look, there are so many things that I go, why would I create that? But I know that I'm the creator. I know that I'm bringing this forward for myself to learn something. And so it's all about learning. And I think that we can learn from each other. And I know from the launch of the book that there's been so many incredible conversations that it has brought up. Friends, people that I know very well, people who I don't know very well, people who I don't know at all have reached out to me and said, I want to talk to you about your book. And what they're saying is they want to talk about life. They want to talk about situations that happen to us, because we're humanity. And what's happened to me has happened to millions of other people. The only difference might be is that I've actually dove deep into a lot of the things that have happened to me to uncover and unravel why, and to get back to that peace and get back to the flow. When life throws us those curveballs, you know, what did we bring that in for? And so I love doing the work myself. And I love sharing the work that I'm doing on myself, because I think that it's so helpful for all of us. That's how we connect. We connect to people about sharing our stories. And unfortunately, in some cases, people just share stories to gossip or share stories to commiserate. You know, the whole phrase, misery loves company. And I think that we're actually here to help each other awaken. And so I would invite all of you that are listening in on this channel to consider yourself as an awakening agent. If you're doing the work and you're unraveling your mind, you are contributing to humanity beyond what you can probably comprehend, because the sooner you know who you really are, the sooner you shine your light really, really bright, and don't allow others to dampen it, the bigger impact you can have on everyone in your life. Strangers that walk down the street, loved ones, people who are close to you, people who aren't close to you. So yeah, I guess it all comes back to just my feeling of pollinating the planet with love, right? And instead of polluting it, why not pollinate? And we're the pollinators. Why not learn from Mother Nature, learn from the flowers, learn from the bees, learn from the ecosystem, learn from source, like how this really works in ease and grace, as opposed to despair and suffering and difficulties. And so, yeah, that's why I'm doing the show. I look forward to having more and more of you join in, more and more of you listening and contributing and asking the good questions. Because if you've got the question, I guarantee there are millions of other people that do too. So whether it's a question about my book, Angels, Herpes, and Psychedelics, or it's a question about your life, I love them all. We're all in it together. And I hope that you'll join me again next week. The music will start at 11. In fact, next week, I'll share a little bit more about why I'm playing this particular music. It's the God code. And yeah, so the music starts at 11, and then we'll start the discussion at 11:11. So please feel free to join in at any point between 11 and 11:11, and then we will start the discussion promptly then. So I look forward to seeing you guys. I can't wait to do this journey with you. And just, I so appreciate you being here and supporting. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please do so. Give it a like, give it a thumbs up, whatever you want to say. Hit the bell, and then you'll get notifications as to when a new episode is posted. So if you can't make the live, please join in and listen, comment. And if there's a question that pops up in your mind as you're listening and it's on replay and we're not live, still write the question. I'll be checking the questions every week. And if I don't get something answered on that particular episode, I will for sure get it answered on next week's. So please do not hesitate to write a question at any point in time in the comments below. And the more you subscribe, hit the bell, the more notifications you'll get, and it'll help the algorithms. And then when I talk about funky, crazy things, you'll still know that it's there, and I won't be deprioritized based on topics that perhaps YouTube doesn't like, so, or social media as a whole. All right, you guys, lots of love and light to you. I cannot